Good morning, everybody. I see we got 15 people here this morning, and we're excited to bring you this new webinar. Please confirm that you hear us and see us. We're excited to bring you this new webinar. Please confirm that you hear us and see us. Okay, so this morning, Karthik is going to talk to us about building apps in Studio. He's one of our senior program managers on the team. I'm sure you've heard of him before, and you've seen him speak here in the webinars with Chuck. Chuck is having a ball fishing today, so we won't have Chuck with us, but I'll be here to support and to answer your questions, as well as some other people who are listening remotely. So Karthik today is going to talk about Studio and is going to give us some great tips on how to build apps in Studio the most efficiently, right, Karthik?
Cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll look at how you can use PowerApps, but particularly the Studio, to build applications using SharePoint. Oh. And hopefully we'll look at a bunch of patterns on how you can do conditional formatting, do sort of lookups, choice fields. Sort of the things that you want to do.
Everybody keeps asking for.
Exactly.
Thank you. This is going to be great. Okay, well, then we'll let you just kick it off, get started.
Sure. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And switch to the deck.
Okay, we did share screen. Your screen is sharing good.
Okay.
What else do we need to do so that it shows up? Let's do. Okay. There we go.
There you go.
Here we go.
Okay, so let's skip to the next one. So here are the patterns that we'll be looking at today. And these are the sort of things that you want to do with your data. We'll start with an example scenario or walk through different controls that you can use. So to start with, we look at what's a gallery, what a form, the data table, essentially like the three big pieces that you would use to view your data from SharePoint lists, and you would also use forms to create new record items. Next on the agenda, we'll look at conditional formatting. How do you show or hide the different controls in an app? If it's an approve button, when do you show it? For whom do you show it? Conditional formatting could also be for color. Let's say the status is approved, then you want it to be green. But if it's rejected, you want it to be in red. So conditional formatting in terms of the color. Third one I had on my list was repeating data entries.
Woohoo! I love that one. You don't know how many people have said, "How do we do repeating tables?"
Yeah, so
thank you.
Turns out you can do with what is there today. So hopefully this example illustrates how you just put the pieces together and get that working. And finally, we look at approval flows. Essentially, and the flow is in a lowercase, although you could use the real flow, Microsoft Flow, to get the approval. There's a whole bunch of examples out there. Really, what we want to do is, if you are a manager or someone who can approve the expense, how can you go click that button and make sure that you update the list indicators? Right? So that's what we want to do today. So moving on, the scenario is more of a just a recap or just a list items we're going to use. We have two SharePoint lists, one to track the expenses. These are expenses that you want to file, let's say when you're on a travel from conference or training or a customer visit. You should be able to file expenses. And really, what you have is, for every expense, you can have expense details, like, hey, you have meals, you have a hotel, you have accommodation, whatever that, like 5 or 10 things are, and you have a lookup relationship between the expense details referring to expenses. And that's pretty much it. I've used a bunch of data types like, single line of text, multi-line of text, numbers, choice, a date, time, field, and lookup. And you could let me actually show you how this looks like. So that's my test SharePoint site that I signed up for. It's a quick E5 office trial sign up. Just created a SharePoint site, and in that I created two lists that you see here. One for expenses. Really, it's like, hey, title, who's making the request, who's the approver, what's the amount, and what's the status, and some comments if you want to approve or reject. What is the start and end date of the expense, what's the department code, and what's the purpose, and all that. So purpose here is enumeration. Let me quickly go to the list settings. So you can see the different data types here. The interesting one is purpose of choice field, and so is the approval status. It's pending, it's approved, or it's rejected. So that's my expense, and what I have is my expense details. I have some sample data in it, so it shows up as I build my app. So really, this is title, and I have a reference from expense details to my expense category. Again, this is an option. This is a choice list. Sorry, you have an amount and then expense date. Going back to the list settings, quickly look at the data types. There you go. You have like lookup, choice, number, date time field. So that's in essence my data model with of course some samples thrown in. What I've also done is I've gone to my Office Admin Center and added a bunch of users. So it's me, and there's also a team approver. So this could be your manager or anyone in the organization who can approve requests. So I'm going to fill this person as my approver whenever I create a new expense. Right? So that in a nutshell is my expense and expense details. You could literally generalize the scenario for other cases, like, hey, are you doing a vacation or a travel approval scenario, a sales order and a line item scenario?
Anytime there's like a master and a sub form kind of a situation, right?
Exactly.
So you have something that's kind of at the top of the form, and then you have details under that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So you could use it to generalize all of this. So before we go into the app, I just wanted to recap some of the controls that we have in PowerApps today, right? The first one is a gallery, and this is like the most used.
Yes.
And you also, because it's most used, you run into a lot of issues getting it right. So just wanted to recap what a gallery is all about. All you're doing is showing a set of records from a data source, right? You have different set of fields. You know there are a number of records. You want to show them in your gallery. If they are images, you can get your image gallery. You can click through the images. If there are just text or data times like we have here, you can show that in the list, in the gallery as well. So what really the gallery is each box that you see here in the screen, like the Ready Conference or the MVP Roundtable, is one record of my data source, right? And to be able to edit the template, what you have to do is you need to click on that pencil icon that shows up when you select the gallery, and clicking on it, and then you can configure the layout and what it's bound to in your data source.
Yeah.
So let's stop right there and then come back to it when we have a bit of a more complexity and build through what we're actually talking about.
Oh, okay, awesome.
So now I'm going to switch gears and bring up my PowerApps Studio. So I'm going to go to New, and let me build my blank tablet application. So that's my application. So one of the first things that I want to do is connect to my data sources, the two SharePoint lists that I showed you. So I'm going to click on data, say add data source, and I have my connection from the previous test that I ran, but you might have to create a new connection if you're starting afresh.
Yeah.
So let me click that, and in here, I need to pass in my URL, which I can pick it up from here. That's my SharePoint list. So I'm going to copy it there, hit go, and it's going to show me the two lists that I had created.
Yeah. What I like about this is some people have, always started their apps directly from the SharePoint ribbon.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that we can actually just start from a blank app and add as many list connections as we want.
Yeah.
So there's no limit to how many list connections we get.
Yeah.
But when we create it on SharePoint above that list, we get one added for us.
Totally.
Yeah.
So this, and the reason I tend to add data sources is once I do that, I don't need to worry about what my data is, and I can fully focus on the app and wire and plug and play. That's really how I tend to build my app.
The fun part, yeah.
So let me click connect, and you should see your 2 data sources in your app. So let's start off with a gallery, like we discussed. So click on gallery and choose blank vertical. That's a good enough one. And we'll add some more niceties to it as we build the app. So let's position it to the left. Let's also add a quick rectangle on the top. So push this up and all the way here. We can add a label, just so make sure we give a name to our app. That should be good. Now notice once I click on label, I can go to the properties panel. It gives me a good set of options. I'm going to say these are my expenses. The text should be in white. And I can center that text and make it slightly bigger. Okay, that's good enough. I can snap it to the middle. And now I have my gallery, right? So let's go back, select the gallery, click on data, and notice that it has some defaults. But click on the drop-down. I'm going to use my gallery to show the list of expenses. Click on it. It still doesn't show data because your layout is blank. Click on the layout, and you have a whole bunch of options on how you display. I don't have any images, so I'm probably going to choose the title, subtitle, and the body. And it throws in a bunch of defaults, right? Not necessarily what I wanted to. Remember, I talked about the pencil icon, so it's a good time to click that. Select the first control, and it highlights that it's a title. So let's say we make it the title. That's my conference details. Second one is not my department. I probably want the amount. So that's that. And finally, I don't need the title here, so I'm going to probably have my choice field. So here's the interesting part. So the choice fields that I'm looking for is the approver status, and it doesn't show up in this list.
That's right. It's a complex field.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So it's a complex field, and Audrey is like, she knows this a lot, so she's able to point out exactly. I mean, I was stuck with this saying, hey, where is my options?
Fields, yeah.
So all I'm going to do is select this field, go to my expression bar, remove title, and say, hey, that's my approver status. And because it's a complex field, as Audrey pointed out, I need to hit the other value that I'm looking for. And that's how you say, hey,
that's all you got to do. It's just got to know it. You know, you got to know it. If you don't know it, you can go crazy looking for it.
Exactly. So now I have my, conference titles, the amount and pending. The amount is in dollars. I know this is more US centric. So what I'm going to do is go all the way here and just append $1 for every record. So I'm just putting $1 here. You could have a lookup as well, just looking at a currency type and then have that show here. But this just adds to the complexity. For simple purposes, I'm just putting $1 here. So there I have it. I have my gallery, and let me also add a little border. It's as simple as saying, hey, I need a border equal to 1. And I can also choose the
I know
color.
everybody noticing this new panel on the right here, this new property panel. We worked really hard on this, trying to bring everything together in one place for you so that you don't have to depend so much on the drop down for properties. Now you can get it right here on the right.
Yeah, and the color panel is so much richer that I almost spend time playing with the colors. Then it's really interactive. Okay, so now we have our list of items in the gallery. So let's go back and see what else we can do, right? So let me go back to this deck. So once I have my gallery, the next thing I want to do is just add a search, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I were to search the ones, hey, related to my conference title or the status or literally whatever fields are exposed in the expense object, right? So really what we're doing is adding a text field on the top of the gallery, just says search. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind the content of the gallery, which is the items field, to say we need to filter those expenses based on what is entered in the text input field. And the way I present my filter is the text input field is in the title, right? So I'm just saying if any of the strings that I enter in my search field match the title column, just show only those items in the gallery.
Yeah.
So let's see how that is done, right? So let's go back to the app. Let's push this gallery down a bit. Go to insert. I have my text input right here. Let me track that here, position it nicely. I don't need a default. Let me knock that off from the properties panel. Probably would need a search as the hint text. Let me enter that one. And that looks good. You know what? I can always add an icon. So let me go to that icons list. There is a search icon right here. Click on it. You can position it here. Great. So that is my search box. And now let me go click on my
Looks good.
Gallery. And my items just says expenses. What I want to do is I want to introduce a filter, right? So I'm going to do a filter expenses based on the text input in title, right? So by default, it's going to match all of the column names. So I need to say text input one.text. By default, it's going to match all the columns. So let's go ahead and preview this one. Oh, notice that it reset my gallery view. So that was, I need to set it back to my title right here. Okay, so let's preview this app. And I can click on, let's say, REA, and it just shows me the Ready conference. I do BI, it shows me the Build conference. And yeah, it's like one of the, you can just say UIL, and then it just a pattern matches. And so you have your search working right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have more expenses that you write over the year, you can quickly search them using the search pattern.
Yes.
So that now that we have the search, let's go back and enhance the app. So what we're going to do is we want to add a data table, right? So what is a data table? A data table is just going to show you a list of records in more of a tabular format. It is read-only at the moment. We plan to add a rewrite capability soon. So what you can do is whenever an item is selected in your gallery, you can show the list of expense details for that expense in this data table.
Yes.
It's pretty powerful, and let's see how we can integrate this into our gallery. Right. So let's go back, and the way I get the data table is just go insert data table. Let's position this guy somewhere here, right in the middle. I just want this space on the top to show me what I selected, so it's just probably going to reserve some space right there. Let's position this here, click on data, and say these are my expense details, right? Once my field loads up, I can order it in any way I want. So maybe the first one is the date. The second one is my title. The third one is my category. And the fourth one is my amount, right? So there you go. With simple clicks, you can know, hey, what are the set of expenses?
Yeah.
There's something wrong in the list, like because it shows more number of items than what I have. So, and the way I know it is because I filled in the sample data. So,
okay, easy way to check it. Yes, know the data.
Yeah. So let me add the references, right? The reference to this column. Notice that I have the Ready conference expenses and the Build conference expenses showing in together.
Yeah.
So I need to filter this list.
Yes.
So the item says that is expense details. One of the most powerful things about a gallery is the gallery.selected is a property that says what's the item that the user has selected.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I really don't need this arrow showing up for every one of these columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the visible property, and you will see me use this again. It's true for everything. So I'm going to say that, hey, if this gallery one, so if it is, sorry, this item is selected. So only when that item is selected, I want to show that arrow. So now I know which item in this gallery is selected and what are the details represented here. Now, let me go back and filter this expense details. So let me say, hey, let's filter the expense details. And the criteria we give is that expense ref we have. So let's take that guy, and it's a complex type, so I need to use a value. But expense ref is referring to a choice column in my parent, in my master list, right? So I'm going to use a dot value, and that's equals what I have selected in my gallery, right? And that's a record, and I need to select the reference to point to my title. And the reason I'm pointing it to my title is because, let me quickly go back to my list. If you look at the expense ref definition, let me scroll all the way down. What I'm going to do is I'm actually using title as the column that I'm referencing in my parent list, right? So that's exactly why in my app, I'm actually saying the expense ref dot value is the same as the gallery item selected dot title.
Yeah.
So now notice that only ready is selected, right? So, and when I click here, only my build elements are shown. So that's a quick check that you can do. I really don't need this expense ID ref. That was more for my test purposes. Let me go ahead and remove that. So it's much cleaner. Okay. So that's good. We have some sort of expense and an expense detail showing up. Let me add that border. I'm always interested in just putting that little one there. It just makes it a little prettier. Okay. So now let's reduce this guy, and I want to make sure I put a quick pie chart just showing the summary of expenses.
Okay, before you go there, I just want to just recap real quick. So we made the gallery, and then we got that where we wanted to look, the way we wanted to look. Then we added the data table. We connected it to the data, but it gave us everything.
Correct.
So we had to add a filter in order to get that data table to only show what was selected in the gallery.
That's right.
Okay. All right,
cool.
Now I'm ready.
So now you have a sort of a master details, and this is still a read-only view, right? So we're still playing with read-only views. Okay. So let's quickly go ahead and add another rectangle. I'm just going to copy paste this guy right here and squeeze that in here. Let me position this here, and I'm going to change the color again to something a little lighter or darker. Yeah, that's better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do insert charts, right? I'm just going to insert my pie chart. You can use a Power BI visual. That's something that we introduced. In this case, I have a lot of properties that are exposed in my pie chart. I can actually bind it to my gallery to show, hey, when you click on Ready Conference or Build, show me a summary of the expense details as a pie chart. It's quicker. I really don't need a legend, so I'm just going to bring that here. Let me position this in. I might have to just move things around. Okay, so a quick tip, right? So you are building a complex app, right? I mean, and this is like a real world use case. You do want to save your application as much as possible. So I am going to do that. Like, this is important. So click on save. I've not saved my app. There are a bunch of other, so I'm going to call this the webinar expenses app, right? So please save your app, and as frequently as possible, hit Control S. If you're a Word or an Excel user, you're probably already used to it.
We do have a little bit of autosave going on, but I feel comfortable when I'm doing something like this to kind of just remember to Control S or save every now and then.
That's a great tip. And Audrey kind of hinted to me that I need to save my app, and it's good. It's a checkpoint, right? It also saves a draft. If you want to come back, you have the draft version. So you said, oh, I made a mistake, and you go back to a different version. So
I love that feature too.
Let me remove that title. I don't need a title here. I can maximize this. From the properties panel, I want the text to be white. So let's do that. So it's still showing some sample data. Let's go back, and we need to plug in our expense details. And I actually need to filter it so that it shows a whole bunch of expense details, right?
Right.
So these are not the right columns. So I need to show the right columns, and I use a function called show columns. So that filters just those columns that need to be presented to this pie chart. So I'm going to say, show me. The first one is actually the category label that comes up. So I'm going to use that. And the second one is the amount. So I'm going to use that and do this. And that's essentially my pie chart.
Awesome.
But this still is all of the expense details. Note the problem that we ran into here, saying that, hey, you want to filter it by whatever this is. So I'm literally going to copy this guy, go back, and say instead of expenses, just use the ones that are selected for that particular item. And so let's preview this. So you click on build, you see the build expenses. You click on ready, you see the ready expenses.
Wow. I haven't tried that. That works really well.
Yeah, it's pretty snappy, and then it's fast as well. Like you can know what your expenses are in a quick summary.
I can't wait to try that. Okay.
Let's spruce this up a bit before we move on to the more complex elements. Let me add a bunch of labels. This expense list has a whole bunch of fields. I might actually add labels here and call out what those fields are. So let's do that. So let's add some read-only information here. Let's make that. And I want the text to be in white, so it's more visual. And let me bind that to what I have selected in my gallery, the record. And let's say we display the title again here. So let's go back, increase the size. Okay, that's good enough. And I'm just going to do copy paste because I already set it to white and all of the colors. So I'm going to copy paste that thrice. What I want to show is the name of the conference, the duration of the trip. So I have a start date, end date, and an amount which summarizes what I'm seeing overall, right?
Okay.
So instead of title, I'm going to bind this to amount. And I do the same trick that I did earlier. I'm going to add a dollar value here. And it's going to show in dollar. And instead of title, I'm going to say, let me copy this because I need a start date and an end date. So I'm going to say start date. And I'm going to say from. So all I'm doing is I'm appending a text that says just to. And I'm going to copy that back and put an end date. All I did was, hey, start date to end date, and you can see that that's my duration. Now, it's great that I have some raw labels here. So just to pretty it up, I'm just going to add a small label right on top here. Just make this really small. And I could say this is my duration.
Mm-hmm. It's coming together nicely.
Copy paste because I already have the size and the color already.
Yep.
So this is my amount.
Now what Karthik is doing is he's control-Cing and control-Ving.
Yep.
And that's what you can't see.
Yep. And here, this need not be the type of conference. What I have is in my data model. Let me quickly go back to my data model. I have a choice field called purpose that shows me what's the type of conference. Is it a customer, is it partner meeting or training? So I'm just going to bind with that. I'm going to type gallery1.selected to get the record. And then I'm going to say purpose, right? And that's a complex type, so I have to choose a value. And hey, the conference name is a conference. But if you go to build, okay, build also happens to be a conference. But once we add a new type of, let's say, a customer visit, you'll see that light up.
I like that.
So let's ignore that one. Just give me a minute. Okay. So this is a quick application to just view the data, search the data. Let's go ahead and go to the next step of inserting new data. I think that's more interesting.
Yes.
So let's quickly summarize what we saw with the data table, right? So we saw what a gallery is with search. We saw a data table. And now let's actually go into the form. Okay. So the form is more of the heavyweight. Well, heavyweight as in it's more powerful. That you can view a record, you can edit a record, you can create a record. You can configure the mode of the form by just setting a property called form mode. You can also bind a specific item to that form to say, hey, in the view mode, what is the item that you're viewing? And we'll see that in a minute. Item is another key property that you would have to use with a form.
That's right. Yeah.
And this whole bunch of magic happens when you just say form.item equal to gallery.selected. Mm-hmm. It's similar to how you did it with the data table, saying data table items are being filtered from a gallery. you can say gallery.selected is your form.item. So literally, once you select something on your form gallery, you can see that displayed in a form.
Okay, this would be a great exercise.
Yeah. So, and we have the notion of cards, like I'm showing you. Cards are nothing but the individual fields that show up inside a form, right? It's that little big box, like you have a title, amount, all of these are cards, and a card can contain a different type of a control based on what the field is being exposed.
Yes, and from what I recall, the card kind of represents an area where you can put a lot of controls, but the key control in a card is the one that's going to be updated on SharePoint.
Exactly.
And so there's an update property there that we want to pay attention to. Yeah.
Totally.
Yes.
Yes. So we'll talk about Audrey is like, she's got all of the concepts right, and we'll go into it and see the update property Audrey was mentioning. Right? So that's our form. So let's go back to our app. And I don't want to mess the screen up. I mean, there's already
it looks great.
Enough information.
Yeah.
So let me add a new screen, and to navigate to that screen, I just want to click a plus button somewhere. So let me click on that plus. Reduce this guy, maybe place it somewhere here. And let me color that guy in white. Okay, so that's good. Let me collapse this. That's the Screen Explorer gives me a lot of, it reduces the clutter, so I just say insert a blank screen. I don't like screen 1 and screen 2. So you click on that, and from your properties panel, you can actually click here and say, it is my new expense screen, right?
And that's new. So over there, that new area where you can name things, rather than the older area where you named it in the ribbon, is so just something to note, everybody. We made a change there.
Yeah.
You can also name it in the Screen Explorer.
Yes, you can do that. So you can click here and say rename, and then you can say, hey, this is my home screen, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I have my home screen and new expenses. So let me go back to my home screen, click on this plus button. And that's an icon. So if I look at my actions, it says navigate. Just click on that, and it fills that in for you. It says navigate, going to new screen and fade. I'll leave it at that. So when I click on that, I should be able to go into my new screen, right? Yeah. So let's add a bunch of details here and then see that interaction play through. So what we want to do is we want a form here. So let's go ahead and do that. Insert form. Let me click on edit form. That looks good. So I'm going to use the entire screen and place that form here. This looks a lot like it's empty at the moment. So let me go ahead and select my rectangle, press my control key, select my label, do my control C. This is the typical word editing experience that I'm doing. I'm going to go back to my new screen, and literally I'll place it there. I just add some prettiness to the app, and then let me rename this label to say, hey, this is my new expense.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I have my form. So let me go select the form control, go to data and bind it to my expenses. So I'm going to create one expense and one or more expense details.
Okay.
So the first part is just creating new expense.
Okay.
It gives me a set of cards.
Yeah.
But I don't need everything, right? And some of these fields are like defaults created by, modified by. Yeah, I don't want to change that. So let me unselect all of those. I don't need to change the ID, identifier, link. Yeah, none of these. I don't need these. Okay, so this looks like a good list. Let me save my app just in case. Okay, so one of the cool features we introduced is the snap to columns. Now, it's not fitting in, I know it has 3 columns, but it's way below. So I just want to increase this count to 4. That looks better.
That's awesome.
So, and you can still see that there are some fields like approver, status, and reject. I don't need to fill that in when I'm creating a new expense, right? So I'm going to remove those. And magically, now I have a much prettier version. Yeah. So let me go back to properties. I can change the fill color again to something that's like gray, lighten it maybe. Yeah, something like that. So that's my expense creation, right? So every time I come to this form, I want to be able to see a new form where I can fill in the expenses. Let me reorder this elements. Maybe purpose comes right after title. So once you select that, notice the card that says purpose. So just click on it and drag it along where you want to position it. and leave it right there. So now it's title, purpose, request, or approval. That seems more meaningful. Maybe even I would say amount comes next after a purpose. So that's even better, right? So you can visually reorder the columns. Okay, I have this. So let me add a button to say that, hey, this is to add expense details. So once you're adding an expense, you want to be able to add more expense details, which is the one that's coming below. So let's have that button right there. And what we want to do is saying, hey, I want to create an expense details and also submit this expense, right? So let me go ahead and say, whenever I press this button, I want to submit. I want to do my submit form. I really don't know the name of this form, but so what I'm going to do is just select that form and it says form 1. Again, not the best. I'm going to call this like the new expense form, or just the expense form, right? Hit enter. Yeah. So once I go back to my submit form, I can say it's my expense form, right? So it's going to create that expense form, and it needs to create a new expense details form. So we'll revisit this formula once we've just added a bunch of the expense details.
I can't wait to see you do that, but yeah, awesome.
So let's go back to our home screen. So click on that plus button. So what we're doing is, hey, you're navigating to this new screen, and you also want to create a new form. That's the other one that you would use. And you say, hey, I want to use a new expense form on my other screen. So let's quickly try that. So whenever I click this screen, it's going to create a new expense form here and wait for you to enter the details. Okay, that's what we did. Okay. So now we have all of this set up. And what we want to do is just add that expense details. And this is where I want to talk about, hey, the notion of adding repeated entries, right? So you add one expense, but then you want to add multiple of those expense details.
Yes, that's common.
So before we go there, I'm still on the styling part. I don't really like rounded corners for this app. So I have this radius button. All you have to do is set it to 0, 1. It counts for the radius of your button. I set it to 0, and now I have square buttons.
Sides. Okay, that's perfect. Is that new too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So we had that as radius left, right. I don't know.
Yeah. And
so it's all
now,
condensed to one.
That's perfect. Love that.
So now you have square buttons, right?
That's awesome.
So let's go back and add a data table. So that data table holds the list of entries that are being added. Instead of just adding it, and I really do a lot of copy paste. So let me go ahead and do a Control C on this guy. Come back to my new expense, do a Control V. Okay, so it's throwing in a bunch of details, which is good, but we don't need all of that.
So you're reusing the data table you already did. Good. That's a great tip right there. Yeah. Okay.
Control C, Control V. That's a friend in many. It has a lot of details, and really this is like an empty form, right? I don't expect data that, and you click on this, it's using the old formula that it, and that's not what we want. We want to have the details from expense details, but the value is not from the gallery that I selected. It's going to be coming in from this form, which is my
expense form.
Exactly. So that's going to be coming from my expense form, and this is the updates that Audrey was talking about. This shows me the record that was filled in, and that's what I'm binding it to. Right now, you wouldn't see any data because I've not filled in the form. So as we fill in the form, then this would show up. So it says I'm not connected to data. So quick check, go to the data tab. It says no data source. It's going to show expense details. So let's click that. Oh, and it did overwrite my formula. Oh, did it? Yes. So yeah, this is the Audrey mentioned in her last session as well. You want to be able to, whenever you change your data source, make sure an items property is filled in. So in this case, I'm going to say form dot updates. Sorry, this is a complex type, so I'm going to say updates dot title in this case, right? Okay. So let me have that. Okay. So you need to add titles, and then you see that, hey, we did not find any data. That's okay, because it's a new
Yes.
form and there wouldn't be any
Yeah.
data to start with.
Yeah.
Let me resize this a bit, and that's where we add our expense details form. So let me add another form that says, hey, this is my edit form. Position this all the way at the bottom. Let's move this up. Bind it to expense details now, and every time you add a details, this would show up in your data table on the top. Again, whole bunch of details. I don't need all of those fields. Uncheck the ones you don't need.
That's a new feature too. We used to have eyes there. But
Correct.
now it's much
It's all
easier. You
checkboxes,
just check
yeah.
what you want and uncheck what you don't want.
Exactly. So these are the fields that I have. So here's another tip, right? So notice how many fields do I have? I have about 5 of these, right? And if you do the snap to columns, you wouldn't see a 5, right? So it's a 4 or a 6. So the way I do it is I click on 4, I constrain all of the boxes. Now I need to fit that boxes in. So let me actually move this to the end. What I do is I select the card and reduce my individual fields. This cannot be reduced. I'll reduce the amount, size. So it's not working. So because it's the snap to columns feature is turned on. So by default, PowerApps is trying to say, hey, you have 4 fields and this is the width of the screen. Therefore,
So
I'm going to
divide it evenly.
Exactly. So I don't need this right now. So I'm going to uncheck it. And now.
That is a great tip, Karthik.
So I can do all of this and reduce this guy as well. Now just click on this.
Yeah, awesome.
That's it.
Awesome.
Everything fits in one line now.
Yep, perfect.
Reduce this, and like you did, earlier, so you can add a button. So we need 2 buttons here. One to add the expense details if you want to keep adding, so this is add new. So you just want to add 1 or more.
Yeah.
And once you're done with, sorry, I think it's bound to. And once you're done, you probably need a done button. Ignore those. I just happened to click my button here, and then it tried to submit an empty form, and then it threw a bunch of warnings. So those are my 2 buttons. I'm going to align it here. And let's wire up the app, right? So my add new is actually submitting.
This one?
Yeah, exactly. It's submitting this form. And I don't know the name of that form either. So let me check that. It's form 2. Go back and then rename it to expense details form.
Yeah, that's the best practice, to rename.
Yeah.
It just makes it easier to compose your
Exactly.
formulas.
At the end of the day, when you look at your Screen Explorer, you should know what are the different components of the app. Yeah. Again, I renamed some of them, which I actively use, but that's a good practice.
Yeah.
So I go click here, and let me fill that in as my expense details form. So it submits one. I also wanted to create the next one, right? So what you do is you just append a new form and say, hey, that's your expense details form. All I'm doing is submitting one and then saying that, hey, just empty that, and then ask the user to enter another
kind of
form.
resets it to the new form. Yeah.
Right. So that's my add new, and my done is not submit, but my done is just going back to my screen. So I'll go back to my actions and say navigate. So that's going to generate a navigate to home screen directly. So I've configured these 2. Now, when I go to expense details, remember I said that, hey, we need to submit this expense form and also add a new expense details form. So that's what we'll do. So I'll do a new form here of my expense details form. And let me also refresh my data source, because I'm adding a lot of expense details. I can actually refresh my data source so it starts appearing in my gallery. So that's all I did. So I have my data table to show my expense details and an expense details form where I can start filling in 1 or more values.
Okay, and just to point out, the reason why you see these reds again, he mentioned it, is because if the button is pressed, this is all WYSIWYG, it tried to submit and nothing was filled in.
Yep.
So that's the only reason why you see those,
Yep.
which is a good thing because it shows you how much data validation is kind of built in. This is a server-side response.
Totally. So let's save the app. I think we have an end-to-end, like a view screen and a new screen. So let's go back to our home screen, go to preview. We have this up and running. Let's click on that plus button and say this is my MVP roundtable discussion, right? And the purpose of this is it's a customer visit. So let's select the next one. Let's say $1,000. The requester, in this case, the person who is me, I logged this in. So let me say name, and then it points. This is a lookup into my people picker
on SharePoint.
On SharePoint, exactly.
Yeah.
So select that. Approver is, remember the approver that I created here. So it's this guy. So I'm going to say approver, and that's my user. When I did this conference, let me pick a date, which is like last week. And it was for 3 days. So let me pick an end date. And the department code, it's not mandatory, but every department has a code. So let's do that. And now when I do this, it's going to add my expense and then say, hey, it's going to create my new expense details.
Yes.
Notice that the top one became, hey, no item to display.
Yes.
We'll fix that in a minute. So
okay, that's the item property.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Audrey knows this. I've not set the item property, so I've
Yeah.
submitted my record, but
Yeah.
I have no record to view.
Right.
So I just need to say, just show me the record that you just submitted, and we'll wire that up in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's add this one. So my expense details is, hotel conference room. That's a category on accommodation maybe. And then let's say they charge me like $800 for that. Again, I just did one date. I mean, you could consider a date range here as well. And the expense ID ref is my MVP roundtable, which I created earlier. So add this. This gets added. So notice that that entry appears on the top here in the data table saying, hey, that's your expense 800. And then the next one may be like food. And that's, let's say like meals, and maybe it's like $200. And then I'll keep it for somewhere around the same date. It's for the same. So what you could do is you could have these expense ID not shown and filled in with defaults because you just don't want the user to choose that. And the other option is also to know what was your overall budgeted expense, and then make sure that you don't exceed your line items to that. Or you could have all of your expense details entered, just do an aggregate and pump that data back to your expense field as well.
Yes.
Okay, so let me add this. So I have added 2 entries, so they show up in my data table. You can add as many as you want. They're all bound to this particular expense. Click on done. You go back and you see that MVP roundtable. Click on it. It should show you the data, which it's not. So in this case, you need to refresh. So that's what is pending. Let me refresh my expense details and my expenses, and notice that you can start seeing this. So you can have that refresh wired into the logic.
Yeah, and you can also put it as
in the refresh.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you can select any conference, and for those conferences, you can see those expenses.
Yes.
So this is basic, like now you have a create view, and then now you have a read-only view. Let's go back and fix that problem we talked about, right? Select your expense. Notice that in your data source, you have this item property, and it's set to none. So this is exactly why you weren't seeing the record you entered.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm going to do is I need to actually show my expense form submitted data, and that's all I need to do. So now you see that you can exactly see the data that I previously entered. So it's magically filled in.
You're awesome. I love it. I can't wait to try this. This is so easy.
So we can spruce this up a little bit.
Okay.
Because the user has already entered this data, these are still editable, right? So, hey, I can still modify it to $2,000 after I entered my expense. So one thing you could do is every time you click on this expense, I can add a variable that says, hey, has this been submitted or not. Again, these are like add-ons that you can think through and saying, this is my submitted value, and I'm going to say it's true whenever you clicked on that button, because I know you created an expense. And whenever you load this screen, I'm going to say the visible property, I'm going to say update context of submitted is false because you're not yet done a submission. And that's an indicator that says like, hey, have I clicked the submit button? And what I can do is I can change the state of my form. Remember, in the presentation, I said you can control the form mode by saying it's a display or a view mode or an edit mode. So I'm going to go to my form mode. Oh, it's not my visible, sorry. It's my default mode, right? So this default mode says that it's edit, but I can control it to say, hey, if it's submitted, then you don't really need a edit mode. You just need a form view mode, right? And if it's not, then you can look at a form edit mode. So this is just, if you start clicking it, I know I'm loading my item property, but then I'm also flipping the default mode to make sure that it's not editable and readable. This is just niceties on how you improve your app.
Make your business logic strong,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So all of this, we have about 10 minutes, so I think let's go back to the deck and just summarize what we saw. We looked at the form and how you can do all of this magic with an item property, with a form mode property, and then how you can show the data. Let's look at conditional formatting, right? And these are like key elements to improve your app, right? So conditional formatting, I'm starting with color. So the conditional formatting, I'm saying that, hey, the pending, approved, rejected, I just want to show it in different colors, right, based on what the state of my expense is. So let's do that. Let's go back to the app. Let's go back to the home screen. And in my home screen, I have this little field that says pending. It's great. And the pending, I get it from this value. Let me copy that. And the way I control the color is, let me go to properties and click on color. That's my color. It shows me some RGBA value. I'm not familiar with what it is, but looking at the color, it tells me that it's some variant of black or gray, right? So I don't really need one single color. Instead, I'm going to conditionally format it. So I'm going to say if this guy, if the status value is pending, then maybe show brown. That's fine. Or then I have two other options. It can be approved or rejected. So I'm going to type another condition. If the status happens to be, I just hit my back button. Sorry about that. Let's start again. So if I say if my status happens to be pending, I want it to be brown. So you can use names of colors.
I like that.
That's more easier.
Human.
Yeah. If the status happens to be approved, which I have in my list, show it in green. If not, show it in red, right? So that's my condition. And once I select out, there's an error in mine. Let me quickly fix that. So let me hover on this and it says unexpected token. So I don't need this extra. Yeah, so let me make sure. Yeah, that's all I need. So I click here and notice the color is now approved as in green, pending as in brown. And if I reject a particular item, then that will be in red. So so that's great. So now I have conditional formatting with color. So let's take it to the next level and saying, hey, conditional formatting based on visibility, right? I want to add an approve and reject button. So if it's really the team approver who's logging into the app, they can click on approve, and based on that, the color changes in this. So what I want to do is I want to really add that approve reject button. Let me go back here and add that approve. Again, Control C, Control V, put it here. Select both the controls. Select both the controls, and now notice that I've multi-selected the controls, and I want to change the color for, let me make that a square button like I always do. And now the approve button is probably in like green.
I like green for approve, yeah.
And reject button is probably like a red. Let's rename this text. Let's rename this text. And whenever you approve or reject, you probably want to enter some comments. So let's put a text box right there. Okay, that's this one. Again, I don't want any text input as my default. Let me enter my hint text. That's what I do. And that's good. So now I can select all of these controls and group them. It's easy to control the visibility using single property. So I'm just going to group them. Just go to your home and you can do a group. So it's all of those controls are either visible or not. It's group visibility, right? Now, how do I get the visibility property? It's turned on. Just click on this field and you will know that, hey, it's always set to true. Notice that the screen, the expression bar highlights. So I want to add a condition. So it says visible only if my gallery selected item, gallery dot selected dot approval status. That's what I want to see. Equals pending. I really don't need the if condition because that's if this evaluates to true or false. So let me go ahead and remove this. So now you will see this pending only for, let's preview this. I'll see this for my ready conference, but if I click on build, I want to see it. Click on MVP roundtable, it comes back again. So that's my conditional formatting where I'm hiding or showing my approve reject based on whether the actual expense was approved or not. I can improve the logic by just saying, hey, and the person who's logged in, right? So we always have a user object. So the user dot email equals gallery1 dot selected dot who's the approver, right? And the approver. This is a approver dot email, and this goes away for me because I'm logged in as Karthik, and by default, the approver was set to, I guess, the team approver. So I wouldn't see it as a user. Yeah. I don't want to file my expenses and approve them, right? It's kind of cool, but I don't want to do that. So now I lost my control. So like usually what you do is you go select it in the Screen Explorer. I'm going to remove this condition as an example and have that show up. Now, what we need to do is whenever I click approve, I want this field to change state and change it to approve. One of the functions we have is the patch function. The patch function lets you update a subset of like one column in the entire record. It's fairly like the syntax goes something like you specify your record source and you actually give the record that you want to change.
Yes.
In this case, so here's where, in this case, we're updating a choice column, right? Updating a choice column requires that it's a complex object. So it's a little sophisticated than it needs to be, right? And our team is working on improving that experience.
Yeah, I know that's on the roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will complete this expression. So let me go ahead and, I have that in my screen. And I'll talk about why and what I have added there. Okay. So just give me a second. I'm going to show what essentially what is the expression that you need to type. So what you do is you first say what record you want to update. So you would want to fetch that record. That you can do based on the criteria saying that, hey, it's this particular line item, it's this expense, right? And then you can say, hey, this is my gallery1.selected. And then what you want to update is essentially that approver field, right? So you have to give the approver status. Go ahead and show you the example right here. I'm just loading an existing app to show what that expression is, and then we can have that plugged into the app.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Yep. It's just kind of remember you get these little list of expressions, and I'll build up a OneNote sometime with the ones that took me the most time.
Yeah. So this is we'll have this expression here. So all I'm doing is I'm doing a gallery1.selected approval status. I'm passing a complex type here saying what is it that you're updating.
Yeah.
For approve and for reject, you would say, hey, this is it's not approved, but it's reject. You have a bunch of options to say that, hey, you can have this choice field as a lookup into another SharePoint list, or you can have this as a text field, and you don't need any of this. You would probably just say approve status equals approved or rejected. So that's a much simpler way to do if you're not using a choice column. I intentionally use a choice column to
So you
illustrate.
could show us this.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So now let's go ahead and preview the app. Right now, build is approved. I wouldn't see it. Ready conference. Now let me go ahead and click on approve. And you should see that, oh, it changed to green. And I think my text wasn't updated correctly. So you can just go ahead and approve that particular line item.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. So that was in a nutshell. Let's go back to the table. I think we talked about conditional formatting based on color, conditional formatting based on visibility. We also talked about repeating data tables on how you can do multiple data entries. And approving items, like I mentioned, you can use the existing field, you can use it, you can use a choice field, or you can use a text box and wire it up. And you can also use a flow, for example. Microsoft Flow is a great way to trigger off an approval flow and have Flow directly update the SharePoint record based on an email. There are numerous examples on that, so I intentionally did not discuss that here. So maybe we'll write that up and maybe have this example available to end users. So that brings us to the end, and here's a recap of all the patterns we looked at: listing of data, adding new data, conditional formatting, repeating data entries, and approval. That's in a sense.
That was awesome. I'm serious. I think you covered everything that has been yelled about. You're like, please tell us how to do this in the past few months. That was awesome. I'm going to rebuild the app. A couple of people wanted you to share the app.
Sure.
And I explained that it's difficult because we're connected to a SharePoint internal site.
We could do an Excel file or something. And
we'll find a way to share with you. But thank you all for coming. I'm sorry we have to stop now. And I appreciate you coming. Follow up with me on Twitter if you have other questions. Thank you, Karthik, for being here.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Right.
Keep your feedback coming.